Saddle up your horses.
Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos podcast, and it is mainly Monday, right? It is mainly Monday. It is the change in schedule due to the fact that it is the 4th of July or I should say this
4th of July week.
4th of July week. We just decided to kind of take it easy and spend some time with family and decide to bump mainly Broncos on a Monday. And so we are happy to have you guys alongside with us. Remember to hit that subscribe button over on the MHRT network page. Let's continue to bump up those subscribers. Maybe we can see if we can get to 2K. That's quite the tall task, but maybe we can get to 2K by the end of 2024. Yeah, we are going to be doing our first deep dive into our training camp previews, where we are going to be talking about the trenches, the trench warfare that Brandon
starts
Thorne,
in the trenches, man.
That Brandon Thorne is actually aforementioned, labeled trench warfare. Yeah, it is. It's a lot like putting in golf. Games are won and lost in the trenches. Golf games are won and lost
In the short game. I'm painfully aware.
You are definitely.
Dude, I can't putt, man.
Yeah,
Josh, it's because it's 4th of July week, and everyone's gonna be busy on the 3rd. And I'm going to be busy on the 3rd, and Cam's probably going to be busy on the 3rd.
I mean, the one thing you could definitely you can bet on, speaking of betting, the one thing you can definitely bet on is we aren't going to be like, those curmudgeons that are going to be, out and about on, July 3rd, shooting fireworks off at like, I don't know, midnight or something like that, like a couple days before or one day before the actual 4th of July. We're not going to be like one of those people.
No, we're not. I don't even know. Does anyone even do like attempt to do fireworks anymore? Because they seem to have been like really cracking down on it. I mean, you can still go to Wyoming and get them and shoot them in Wyoming, but like launch them in Wyoming. But I feel like I haven't really seen people, like, maybe it's just where I live, but I haven't really seen people try to do that much.
I mean, it definitely feels like something that you would want to be doing when you're younger. And then obviously when you're older and you become wiser and you realize that you shouldn't be shooting fireworks off of government property.
I guess all of my neighbors are old then. Makes sense. I live in the suburbs.
It seems very fitting that the Big Mike would be a part of the Trenches show, knowing the fact that Quinn Miners was literally the cover photo for the Trenches show. What's up, Big Mike? I hope your first day at the new job went well.
Oh yeah. That was I'm gonna be honest, like I don't remember anything from last week, man. I had a crazy weekend. I went whitewater rafting for the first time in my life. Survived, barely.
You survived. It
was fun. It was fun. It was on the Pooter. It actually wasn't terrible. There was one section where I was like, holy shit. But it actually wasn't that bad. It was super fun. Would do again, 8 out of 10. Definitely a good time.
What's up, Clayton? Yeah, make sure you listen to Clayton here. Smash that like button and share. Have your friends tell their friends and pass it along. I feel like so he says first day went well. We had zero work. I feel like that's almost like the first day of school. Like literally the first day of school, you literally walk in and it's basically introductions, and then they go around the room and you basically reenact the scene in D2 of the Mighty Ducks where you literally, basically explain like where you're from. That's basically, the first day of work or the first day of, school. It's literally just all about introductions and getting used to the place. Typically. We definitely do have a lot to talk about in terms of the trenches. I feel like, and this is something that you and I have always done, which is when we talk about the defensive line, it's really hard to talk about one without the other. And so I figured we would at least lump the pass rush unit, into this. Guys like Baron Browning and, Jonathan Cooper and Nick Benito and, and Jonah Ellis, like basically, those types of players into this. Because, in ways of making that defensive line better, it is very important, to really talk about that. So
I still consider that the trenches, personally. The edge spaces. I mean, it's not really like what some people would consider like the trenches, the guys getting down to the mud and the defensive line, defensive tackle. But I consider the edge the trenches. So yeah, we're talking about it.
By the way, if you guys actually would also like to check out my guest appearance over on Broncos Avenue, make sure you guys go check that out. I recently just did a show with Broncos Ave. We recorded last night and it got published today. So make sure you go check that out. And it was not quite a 53-man prediction, but we did a breakdown, if you will, from the offensive side of things. And let's just say I had a hot take in there as far as possibly a certain number of players that'll be in a positional group. So make sure you go watch.
Give us a little teaser.
Yeah. That's basically what
that's the teaser. Okay, fine.
Yeah. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm just 100% gonna leave it at that. It's up to you to hit the actual listen icon and actually listen with your, God created ears.
Okay. Yeah. So which side of the trenches do you want to start on here?
Well, I figured since we have Big Mike in the chat now, I feel like it's, appropriate that we at least talk about the offensive line. We talk about the offensive line. How would you rank? I'm not saying to go from like 1 to, 32, or in essence like 1 to, 8 or 1 to 10 or whatever, 1 to 15.
You want me to rank our line compared to the rest of the league?
Yeah. How would you rank the offensive line just in general from just an overall placement with the rest of the NFL?
I feel like it's incomplete because like we know nothing about what's happening at center. And that's, in my opinion, a big enough question mark and hole to like kind of be like, well, I don't know if Alex Forsyth, who I'm anticipating is going to be our center, totally, comes out and falls on his face, then it's going to be a lot lower. If he comes out and he's good, then I don't know. I mean, I think it could be. I think part of this too depends on Mike McGlinchey and what he looks like specifically in pass protection. I mean, it did seem like he sort of got a little bit better towards the end of last year, but like that was definitely like, even when we signed him, that was his weakness. He's good in the running game, but he's not good in pass protection, which especially with the rookie quarterback, like you're going to need that. And thankfully, like, Bo Nix, I would say from what I know about him, and obviously we've seen him play in the NFL, isn't really going to give you the same level of it's the quarterback's fault that you got with Russ back there. So, maybe he will look even better because he's getting an upgrade in who he's protecting in the sense of like pocket presence and such. Again, I don't know like what Bo is going to do in the NFL because we haven't seen it happen yet, but he, it's hard to be worse, I feel like, than Russell Wilson was for the past 2 years, to be honest. So I think it all depends on center and Mike McGlinchey. If let's say that Alex Forsyth is average, let's say he's average. Let's say Mike McGlinchey is slightly above average.
Okay.
Top 12.
See, that's kind of like where I have it right now, as far as, top 12.
I mean, that's a reasonable prediction for me. Like, I think it's fairly likely that happens. Again, if Mike McGlinchey looks somewhat above, like slightly above average, Alex Forsyth looks average to good, like then I have no problem at all saying top 12. But you don't know. I mean, it takes a long time. Offensive line specifically is the position that takes a long time to gel, usually the longest time to gel between players. Obviously, you have, Alex at the center position who kind of like, it kind of becomes the position that like most frequently is the one that's also in charge of like calling protections and doing all that from the offensive line in terms of you'd almost say like the leader of the line, if you will. And I mean, look, I've heard really good things about Alex Forsyth. We've heard the coaches rave about him. We've heard former players rave about him when we drafted him and he fell to us in the 6th round, I think. 6th or 7th, right? Super late, I know. I think it was the 6th. And it was Mitchell Schwartz, I think.
It was
Mitchell Schwartz.
Jeff
Schwartz.
Mitchell, they all sound the same.
I knew it was Schwartz. Comes out and was like, basically like, this was the second best center. I think he said second best or best center in this class.
It was definitely,
and he was like shocked. Yeah, shocked that he fell that far. So we'll see. I mean, I think a lot of it again depends on Alex and Mike. If Mike can continue what he was able to do sort of towards the end of last year and just continue to get better, and Bo Nix is able to prove that he's an adequate quarterback in the pocket, which is an upgrade on what we've seen before, then again, I think it's trending upwards. And if let's say Alex Forsyth comes out and he's a top 12 center, I don't know if I expect him to do that this year, but if he turns into that, like all of a sudden we're cooking with grease here, we're cooking with gas. But the only like slight downside to me is primarily because of the Garrett Bowles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna go with situation. In the sense that like he's 32, obviously had the leg injury, which he's recovered from, but it's also like he's still like, we still don't know if he wants to stay. So I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, if that doesn't happen, then we're looking at another situation where, okay, well, you got still kind of a hole at right tackle, and then now you have like a massive hole at left tackle, and we're back where we were. So that's the biggest thing to me. But if he, gets back to what he was before, obviously before the leg injury, which I have every reason to believe that he will, it's all about, does he stay in Denver is the problem. Because again, like this year could be top 12, easily top 12 could go top 10 offensive line. If we lose Garrett, it's going to suck. We'll see.
Well, and I think that the moment you have a Garrett Bowles discussion or McGlinchey and Forsyth is really where you start, playing the game of, and you really alluded to that and you described it nicely, but it was like that's basically where, you look at it just from the overall standpoint of what will the future of the offensive line be? Because, that had been somewhat, a big conversation piece with the Broncos, and that has been, how can this offensive line, which had been, basically patchwork, really since Peyton Manning, or even some pieces, basically sprinkled here and there that would be there for a couple of years, but there was never really a longevity, offensive line in place, either with Peyton Manning or even, post Peyton Manning, really. And there are a couple places that I truly feel like you could have a plan in place. The question is just, what will that future, consist of? Obviously, you spend, money, should we say, to guys like, Juwan James. You just got to say for what it is. You spent money for Juwan James, hoping he could really lock down that right side. Thankfully, McGlinchey has never really been that way so far right now, knock on wood. But James was an injury liability. McGlinchey is not. He's actually been there and it seems like he had been turning the corner. McGlinchey, for me, at least with 2024, and in terms of the offensive line with this year, McGlinchey and Forsyth, and I will actually specifically say Forsyth is probably going to end up being the ones that really bump up where this offensive line is going to end up being.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Because I feel like, you know, we use the terminology so often when it comes to the center position as being an anchor. Well, Alex Forsyth, he really needs to prove that he can be the anchor of that offensive line. And I think what will really help, and obviously we've used this, you know, we have definitely used this a time or two when we've talked about Forsyth, and we definitely used it, you know, every once in a while when we even talk about Bo Nix. But having that familiarity, you know, with your quarterback, I think is a very massive leg up for you when you are a center, and especially a leg up for you, you know, even in a center competition. Now, I will also say, you know, even to that vein with Forsyth, and this is maybe it's not something we touched on either, but I actually do not think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, chat and Brandon, this might actually be the first time that the Broncos have actually had a quarterback center with previous history, even before, even before, you know, I should say like their first snap together, if you will. I actually think that because Manning obviously spent, you know, so much of his time with, you know, Jeff Saturday, obviously with the Indianapolis Colts. He really didn't have, you know, say like a center, right? He really didn't have a center that got brought here that he was rather familiar with, I don't think. So Bo Nix and Alex Forsyth really, they really kind of already feel like two peas in a pod already. So like the chemistry would almost, you would assume, be there. So I think that
They only had that one season though, didn't they? Just 2022.
it was a good season, but yeah, no, you're right.
It was, yeah.
But this might be the first time that I can think of where, you know, the Broncos will possibly finally have a quarterback and center with previous experience before their first game, like at all, like even their first game.
Well, I mean, you also have the Troy Franklin connection with obviously Bo Nix, but you also have the Troy Franklin connection. I mean, obviously he's not throwing the ball to Troy Franklin, but you also have that synergy between like basically the guy that's snapping the ball, the guy that's getting the ball and throwing the ball, the guy that's catching the ball. I mean, like that's I'm saying Troy Franklin also has synergy with Alex Forsyth. And I mean, again, is it a direct connection? No, but like it definitely can't hurt to have three guys on that offense learning this new offense together that have learned new offenses together and operated an offense together in the past.
Right.
I mean, obviously it's different because like, you know, two of them are rookies. Really, you can almost say all three of them are rookies because we haven't really seen Alex do a ton. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a leg up. And yeah, I can't really think of a previous situation where the starting center and the starting quarterback had like played together before like coming to the NFL on the same team.
Or even like on their second team or something, and then, you know, with like the previous experience. I mean, like there's those, you know, cases where like if you're in the Pro Bowl, like, but that's like a one-off thing, like that's a one game thing, you know. Like,
yeah.
You know. But I think for as far as the offensive line is considered, like I think it's really imperative for the Broncos to really kind of figure out, and then you go into the Bulls discussion. I like how you even talked about that. Like then you go into the Bulls discussion, and then that's when you really start to look at it from the standpoint of what does the future hold here, and how aggressive are the Broncos going to be to find a long-term solution at left tackle? It's a topic that we've been mentioning ad nauseum, either on 5280 or, mainly, or any other Broncos show that, is on the network, or even any Broncos show that you listen to on a podcast. I would venture to guess this has been talked about, enough, or more than enough. And that is, they've not drafted a tackle since Bulls, like at all. Like they've not drafted a tackle since Bulls. And, there have been deep classes here and there, not just last year, not just this current year, but even last year. There have been deep offensive line classes, and the Broncos have made a concerted effort, even under John Elway and then now under Peyton, that they've just made the concerted effort to not draft a tackle. Now, I love the idea of I should say undrafted free agents, and develop them and see if they can truly, be starting level caliber tackles, in the future. Guys like Alex Pokczewski, you really can't rule a guy like him out, possibly being a day one left tackle starter for the Denver Broncos based, on how they view him and obviously the Bulls' contract situation. But how aggressively will the Broncos, and maybe to piggyback off what Alex is saying here, but like, how aggressively will the Broncos want to get something done with Bulls before the season or during the season? Or how aggressively are they wanting to go after another offensive tackle in, say, free agency? And there's not a lot of left tackles that are going to end up being on the market in 2025 free agency. But there's certainly one that, if given the opportunity, that he even walks, and it's very unlikely, but Tristan Wirfs, the moment he hits the open market, I would do everything that I possibly can as an insurance policy, knowing the fact that, I'm sorry, Garrett, but there is a much younger option out there on the market, you could argue better option on the market with Wirfs. And then
I also think it's more likely that we come to long-term contract agreement with Garrett Bowles than it is that Tristan Wirfs is available. But damn, if he is,
I agree.
The Brinks truck. No, I know, but it's like, damn, that'd be crazy. That'd be cool.
Well, I'm not trying to roll in another positional preview here, but it's at least
we'd have to get with the Brinks truck. Would have to get in line. There would be traffic.
But it's at least, I think, worth the question. And given, with what we're talking about, the trenches is, would you much rather spend on a wide receiver 1 in the 2025 free agency or a left tackle?
Probably. I mean, if we don't have Garrett Bowles,
it's just a.
Well, what wide receivers are available? I don't know this upcoming class, or this upcoming free agent class.
It did get dried up rather quickly, given Nico Collins and Amon St. Brown, and T. Higgins didn't get signed. But there was another player that obviously Justin Jefferson, but there were a few wide receivers, but I mean, there are some that are certainly out there, some that are at least viable trade candidates, possibly. Brandon Ayuk obviously has been, talked about. Juwan Jennings was recently like a sleeper, but the 49ers really locked him up.
I think I'd rather rather go after offensive tackle or left tackle. I don't really see. Honestly, I think the wide receiver group is kind of similar to what I talked about with Tristan Wirfs, in that I don't think any of these top guys are going to become available. The only one who's maybe is, you see the report about CD Lamb basically saying he wants out if they don't give him an insane deal, an insane deal, maybe. But even then, we'd have to give him the insane deal, and there'd be more competition. So I'd rather go after the tackle if we know that Garrett Bowles is not going to be around. Because there's definitely wide receivers that are on our roster that we haven't really seen be able to have an opportunity to make a massive impact, and they might be able to. Now, do I think any of them are like a wide receiver 1 caliber level that's like similar to some of these guys? In terms of like, do I think there is a CeeDee Lamb type wide receiver that is on this roster that is just kind of unknown? No, like absolutely not. That's just insane. But I mean, I definitely think like there's some guys that I'm excited to see what Marvin Mims does. I'm excited to see what Troy Franklin does. I'm excited to see Tim Patrick come back. I'm excited to see with whatever happens to Cortland Sutton. Like there's definitely like the cupboard is not empty, but if Garrett Bowles walks, the cupboard is quite empty.
Yeah. It's and that's why the Alex Pofcheski thing given Bulls is a bit fascinating. Now I do know that Jordan mentioned this on Broncos Avenue, but that Garrett Bowles could be a trade candidate. I would actually kind of push back a little bit against that, just because it's really hard for a left tackle to be replaced mid-season. You know what I mean? And especially given the fact that you would the tackle, if you will, the tackle that would be replacing Bulls would either have to come in either due to a Bulls injury and just play due to the eye test and overall performance. He's got to basically play at an all-pro level, if you will, immediately, for them to just really strongly decide to just move on from Garrett Bowles. Versus, it kind of is what it is in the sense that you just move on from him, and you might actually luck into the idea of, okay, we're going to get a compensatory pick possibly for Garrett if it comes to be that way. But we've been talking about the Broncos having compensatory picks for the last 2 years, and lo and behold, despite some of the big contracts, the Broncos have hit and missed, if you will, when it came to the comp picks. So, but I just think that with the offensive line, and then it's going to end up becoming, obviously, there's the conversation of Quinn Miners, right? Because Quinn Miners is going to get paid, and I do think that there is the misconception out there still that the Denver Broncos do not have any money. Like, have you seen the amount of cap space that the Broncos are going to projected have, in 2025? Like, they are projected to have close to or upwards of 100 million plus in cap space. That is more than enough that they can get a deal done with Surtain and get a deal done with Miners, and still get a few moves here and there. So I just think that they obviously are probably going to end up prioritizing Miners over Bulls, right? That's just a fact. They're going to probably be prioritizing Miners over Bulls in that situation. He's probably going to end up being paid. I will say this. I think that I'll further what you mentioned earlier on this, because you said that it's, what did you say? You said that it is far more likely, that we actually sign Garrett Bowles to an extension versus, we sign a wide receiver 1 in free agency, right?
Oh, no, I think it's way more likely that Garrett Bowles is signed to a long-term extension than it is that Tristan Wirfs is available.
Oh, that one. I think both are very agreeable, though. Like, I will say this, though. I think the Quinn Miners contract is far more likely right now than a Garrett Bowles extension.
Probably, yeah.
And that's just like, I think there's a definite chance both can get done. It's just and this is a conversation I think you and I had, and it's worth bringing it up. But like, what would a deal consist of for Garrett Bowles, right? He basically signed for, what was it, almost like 4 years, almost like 16 million, right? Or something like that in his first contract, which, looking back on it, is very cheap is very cheap, all things considered, for that tackle market. I wouldn't even be the least bit surprised. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he has maybe just a little bit more, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has close to that same deal. Maybe what they do is they do a 3-year deal with a player/club option. So it is 4 years, but that 4th year is that player club option. And it's basically, that maybe 14 to 18 million, if you will, a year. And that's what you sign up for.
You're talking about Bulls or Miners?
Bulls.
Oh, I'd be okay with that. Personally. I mean, if he comes back and he looks like he did before, I mean, I know he already did come back, but if he continues to look like a top 7 left tackle in football, then yeah.
I think the most I would ever,
even though it's 32.
Yeah, the most I would ever really top would be the 20.
I don't think I'd go to 20.
But it would. But if it is at the 20, it would have to be 3 years. No matter, no player club option. It would have to be. It would have to be
3 years, 60 million. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Because anything that is 4 years and the 20 million, that's and then obviously given what the guaranteed money will be like, obviously that's way too much. That's way too much. So if you're going to go 2 years, 20 million a year, it has to be capped out at 3 years. It has to be capped out at 3 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would actually tend to agree with Alex on this, that I would actually much rather have 2 guys on the line. And I will say this, given the fact that Sean has prioritized the offensive line, there are those couple ways where it can go, which has been the depth and development piece, right? And there are different avenues that they can go, which is, it's one of the reasons why the hiring of Mike Munchak was so pivotal, and why it's still, maybe to this day, was so frustrating why they moved on from him, because you actually did see progression from guys like Bulls, and you did see progression with guys like Dalton Reisner, right? So, I mean, having a coach who really firmly believes in the offensive line, I think is only going to just benefit guys like Garrett, especially Ben Powers, who, Sean handpicked, right? Ben Powers, and then of course, Mike McGlinchey, and, to circle back on Mike McGlinchey, I will say, if there is probably one pivotal offensive lineman that a change in quarterback actually will help maybe the most, I think it actually is going to end up being Mike McGlinchey the most. And I think that I realize, this may not sit well with some Bronco fans in terms of watching offensive line. I think it's really easy to assume quarterback running around, and he gets sacked. Oh, wow, that was really, really bad offensive line play. Look, it's actually the opposite. If you are running around and you are trying to put extra pressure on your offensive line, that tells you more about the quarterback play, and you have, antsy feet in the pocket, and you're not actually even trusting your offensive line to protect. And so much so that if you are scrambling around, you are putting far more pressure on your offensive line than less pressure, right? And so I think that having a quarterback, whether it is Jarrett Stidham or even Bo Nix, having a quarterback that is going to be behind center, that is going to get the ball out quicker, get the ball out in a more decisive manner, I think is going to very much benefit a guy like Mike McGlinchey, who, he definitely may not be the best pass blocker, but I do think that in one of the ways that we saw with Peyton Manning, right, Brandon? like one of the things that made Peyton Manning so good in helping the offensive line be better than they probably were was his quick decisiveness, was his quick, decision making. And so I think that for specifically like a guy like Bo Nix, who is, very quick in terms of his processing and everything, I really do think that type of play style is actually going to help and even benefit a guy like McGlinchey that much more, and even help possibly his pass protection development a little bit. So I think you actually might get a chance to see. I will actually even say this. I think you get a better Mike McGlinchey. What the levels are, I can't predict that, but I think that you will get a better McGlinchey in year 2.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if McGlinchey is improved from what we saw him be like. I want to know how much he's going to improve by, but I definitely think that is pretty. I don't know if I'd say likely, but like it's definitely something that I could see happening.
So when we did our 53-man roster prediction on Broncos Ave, we came to the consensus that they would keep 8 offensive linemen. Are you firmly confident on that? And people in the chat, feel free to.
Let me look at our roster real quick.
You can actually, ourlads.com has a unofficial depth chart for 2024, and that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. But I ran with 8, but for people that are in the chat or you, Brandon, like what?
Okay, so obviously got Bulls, Powers, Miners, McGlinchey. They list Wattenberg. Okay, Wattenberg, Forsyth. I think I'd go with 8. I do.
Okay.
I don't think they're. I mean, Calvin Throckmorton is good depth. Alex Palczewski is still good depth. Sam Mustipher they brought in for a reason. Matt Pert they brought in for a reason. Like, I do think they would probably roll with 8.
Okay.
I don't know what 8's going to be, but I think they'd have 8.
I was actually just going to put you on the spot. So obviously,
depends on what they look like in preseason.
Obviously, I think we have an idea of what our starting 5 will be, and I would venture to guess it's going to be the same offensive line. So we'll have Garrett Bowles at left tackle. You say yes, and you say no for what you disagree with. Okay, Bowles at left tackle. Ben Powers at left guard. Alex Forsyth at center. Quinn, the Belly Miners, at right guard, and McGlinchey at right tackle. Do you disagree with that?
No, I think that's like the most obvious one.
So then I agree with you. We're going to roll with 8. So who are the 3 that we're keeping? Or that you are keeping, I should say.
I mean, again, I think we need to see them do something. Like, I don't know totally off the top of my head.
I know, but I hate to put you on the spot, but like, in the vein of us getting a training cramp, brain cramp almost, but a training camp preview of what we think is they're going to be keeping with, which is 8. Who are the 3?
I'm going to go with Alex Palczewski.
Okay.
Calvin Throckmorton.
And
it's between Matt Pert and Luke Wattenberg, probably. The reason I'm going with Calvin is like he has that positional versatility. Like, he's played center, he's played guard. I think he's even played tackle.
Okay.
So that could be interesting.
This is what I rolled with. So obviously we have the starting 5. I rolled with Alex Quinn Bailey. I went with Alex Povchesky. But in this case, I went with Sam Mustipher.
I mean, that's definitely an option.
Not Luke Wattenberg. So Luke Wattenberg was the odd man out and cut. And the reason why I went with Mustipher is I like the idea of having a veteran presence behind Forsyth. I'm not saying Wattenberg, at this stage in his career isn't a veteran, but I would probably trust Mustipher just a little bit more than a guy like Wattenberg. Now, Wattenberg, to his credit, got better, in 2023 from what we saw in preseason to maybe some, places here and there. And I will say this, it seems like he might actually be better suited for guard than he is center. And the unfortunate thing there is the guard positions that they have for the practice squad player that I will say, Nick Garuglio, who they drafted in the 7th round, is probably going to be a practice squad player. And Frank Crum also could, be a practice squad player as well. I will say this, to circle back on Povchesky, if they are very confident in Povchesky, that's really the debate that I would be wanting to watch if I was if I was a Bronco fan, would be the battle between Frank Crum and Alex Povchesky. That would be the type of competition that I would actually be a huge fan of. Because if I feel like the winner of that might actually be your starter down the line and possibly replacing, Bowles or whatever. But so those are the 8 that I'm rolling with.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think instead of keeping Throckmorton, like it's definitely an option.
Yeah. And it is certainly worth having this conversation, obviously, but it wouldn't hurt to bring in another veteran center. I know he's dealt with a lot of injuries. The unfortunate thing that I will say with this is, if they sign Connor Williams, Alex Forsyth will not be your starter. Connor Williams will be your starting center. That's not a bad thing.
Do you think that happens? Because
no,
I don't.
I don't. But I'm speculating that out there because obviously you have to say it for what it is, right? Forsyth is a 7th round draft pick. So if there was any likely body to be added to that room, that's out there on free agency, it is 100% possibly another center. And if they wanted to go down that route, Connor Williams would probably be that guy.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Moving now forward to the defensive side of the ball. And thus leading it to the defensive line. And I feel like it's also important because I had a tweet yesterday talking about the law firm of John Franklin Myers being the leader of the John Franklin Myers indispensable fan club, not Brandon over there. But John Franklin Myers, as I was saying yesterday, I think he will have 10 plus sacks in 2024.
That's the hot take.
But
it's not crazy.
Anyway, so right now, our lads, I'm sure you're on that side also. The starting defense.
He's your starter. He's your starter.
Oh, no. But yeah, the starting defensive line has Zach Allen, DJ Jones, Jonathan Franklin Myers. And then they have Browning and Cooper.
Yeah. Yep. I thought you were going over like inside linebacker too. I was like, no, that's Cody Barton. Yeah. Jonathan Cooper. Here's the thing with the defensive line. Like, I think this is arguably the like most improved position on this football team in this offseason, outside of obviously quarterback, but which is like undecided. Incomplete grade so far on that. But I do think like defensive line was low key also the biggest need, I think, in my opinion, outside of obviously quarterback going into this offseason, because like we all know how absolutely atrocious the running defense has been. Specifically, I'm looking at you, the Dolphins game where Devon Achane ran for 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Raheem Mostert ran for 82 yards and 3 touchdowns, and some guy named Chris Brooks ran for 66 yards on 9 carries. And obviously there's more than just that game, and they did kind of turn it around a little bit, but it was definitely like not a good year for the defensive line, and it's kind of been a bad year for the defensive line for the past several years, unfortunately. And the first move we made originally going into the season was we signed Malcolm Roach from the Saints, who graded out at least last year as PFF's #1 rated run defender on the defensive line, which was sorely needed on this front because we cannot stop the run, or we could not stop the run really for the majority of last season. So that was a big signing. And then it was pretty much entirely overshadowed by the trade for John Franklin Myers, which was pure robbery from the Jets. And I kind of want to play like a Jet on here to talk about that because he would lose his mind. Like that was like, I don't think I've seen a single Jets fan that wasn't just like completely just pissed off about the fact that they made that trade, like that the Jets made that trade. Like that was like egregious according to Jets fans. And the more I looked into it, honestly, they're right. Like it's kind of insane that we got John Franklin Myers for was like a fifth round pick, 6th round pick, something ridiculous, 6th round pick, just so stupid.
What I was just gonna say, I had a conversation with Scott about this, but the thing is, like, what makes it worse is Hassan Reddick has been MIA. Mm-hmm. Hassan Reddick has been MIA. The guy that they tried to acquire, get a contract extension with, he's been non-existent. For those OTAs. But you know who did show up finally after his trip from Egypt? Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But now continue.
John Franklin Myers comes in, and he could pretty easily be the best player on this defensive line from day one. I mean, Zach Allen was good. Zach Allen
was their best defensive lineman.
Was our best defensive lineman last year.
Yeah.
But John Franklin Myers is a force in the run game, and he's a force against the pass as a pass rusher. And we haven't really had a consistent good interior pass rusher since I don't even know. Like at one point, I know we had signed defensive lineman from Tennessee who was supposed to kind of come in and be like our new go-to pass rusher from the inside.
You're trying to make me cry.
Whose name I can't remember. Totally just whiffed. Just sucked.
You're trying to make me cry, aren't you? Jarrell Casey.
Oh, Jarrell Casey. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was horrible. But I don't even know. I'm literally trying to think. Who was our last good interior pass rusher?
Malik Jackson, probably. Malik Jackson.
Maybe.
Would you argue?
I mean, Draymond Jones, I guess, kind of. Shelby Harris, you can consider sort of like.
Actually,
it might be Shelby Harris.
Well, I was actually going to say there might be look. We're going to have John Super Bowl on the podcast here eventually. There's an argument to be made that Mike Purcell might have been maybe the most consistent defensive lineman who was rather good for the time that he had been here. And he's a free agent, by the way. He's a free agent still. And according, to source close to the situation, Super Bowl, he really wants to be a Bronco still. So, Sean, if you really want to, sign your Air Jordan buddy with his Air Jordan cleats, bring back Mike Purcell. But I think
Malik Jackson definitely was like, in terms of
Derek Wolf in that same vein.
Yeah, in terms of like definitive force for the interior, probably Malik Jackson. Anyway, but John Franklin Myers, the lawyer, the judge, the judge, jury, and executioner, is going to 100% be a player that we've needed, that we have not had since, let's say, Malik Jackson, which was 9 years ago. 9 years ago. I think 2015 was his last year, I think.
Well, here, yeah.
Last year here.
It was the Super Bowl year, but
the Super Bowl year, 2015. But yeah, we haven't had a good interior pass rusher in a very, 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 very long time, is the point. And John Franklin Myers, good interior pass rusher. So I think, this defensive line definitely has seemed like it's been able to be improved. And then we have brought in Jonah Ellis, who seems to be kind of that twitchy, good pass rusher. Again, I still think we can get more. We just need more consistency out of the pass rush and the edge room specifically, just to make more of an impact. That's what we need them to do. And I feel like I've been saying it for several years now. It looks like on paper that we have maybe some guys that are going to be able to do that. Again, they need to prove it, and that's been our biggest problem. But it's definitely it could happen, and I think they're going to have some more help because John Franklin Myers is going to be a consistent disruptor from the inside.
So now that you basically got talking about, I hate to go on this tangent, but since you were talking about a dominant defensive lineman, right, that we've had, and we think it possibly is Malik Jackson or Derek Wolf, right? So I'm going through the different dates, right? I'm just going to scroll through until we get to 2020, the current year. Okay. So let's just start with 2016. Derek Wolf, Sylvester Williams, Jared Crick, Vance Walker, Darius Kilgo.
Oh, Jared Crick. I forgot about Jared Crick.
And Vance Walker. Okay, so now we'll go to 2017. We'll go to after free agency, so let's just go to June 1st. Derek Wolf, Domata Peko.
Oh, yeah, Domata Peko.
Jared Crick. You know what? I'm not saying he's in the conversation of number one, but DeMarcus Walker turned himself into a pretty good player with the Chicago Bears.
Unfortunately, he was not good when he was a Denver Bronco.
Okay, that was 2017. Okay, so now we'll go to 2018. Oh, I forgot about Zach Kerr. Zach Kerr.
Ooh, yeah, Zach Kerr.
Zach Kerr
was good.
He was fine. He was okay. Oh, you know what? No, I got our answer. Deshaun Williams.
Deshaun Williams is good too. Yeah, for sure.
Hell. Well, I guess what is your when you're saying good?
I mean, he was good. I don't know if any of those guys. Which one of those guys was consistent?
Well, considering I'm on 2018, Domata Peko was still here.
No, not consistently on the roster. Consistently good.
Okay, so let's go to 2019. Adam Gotsis became a starter. Shelby Harris, Derek Wolf, Draymond Jones, I think was probably Draymond Jones' first year. That's when Mike Purcell came in. Billy Wynn. You know, honestly, the way things are shaping up, so this is 2019, it might actually be like there might actually be a case for it to be Mike Purcell. Like, so obviously in 2020 was when you had Jarrell Casey, you know, and then that's when Mike Purcell took over the starting lineup.
Man, Jarrell Casey just hurts.
I mean, Shelby Harris, I wouldn't say he was dominant, though. He was consistent.
Yeah, but as a pass rusher, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd say he was. But he was definitely more of like just a run disruptor and just
pass defender.
Pass defender, literally. Like, best hands in the league. But yeah, I mean, we desperately needed the point of this little endeavor that I went on was we've desperately needed a good defensive line. We have not had a good defensive line in quite a long time, and we've made some moves that could make this a pretty good defensive line. So I think we have the makings of a good offensive line. We have the makings of a good defensive line, and I don't even know the last time we were good in the trenches on both sides of the ball.
Right.
So it's important. It's important with a rookie quarterback, and it's important just in general.
You know, and then I think to further that more, look, and I realize we sit here on July 1st. It's literally the month of, you know, as we begin training camp. I think on the surface, when you look at the Broncos roster as a whole, it looks like it's a bit more complete from top to bottom on that defensive line. And I think that, you know, one of the players that I really feel like is initially going to get slept on a little bit, but I think is really going to end up really becoming a household name. Household name in the sense of like fan favorite. I think he's really going to be a really solid player for them. I think is going to end up being Malcolm Roach. I think Malcolm Roach is really going to be that player that really kind of cements himself as, you know, like that run defender. Honestly,
PFF's highest graded run defender for a reason. I mean, again, even if you don't like PFF, and I don't place, you know, total stock in what their grades say, but
it's more about their statistics, and
he's good against the run.
Yeah, but I was just going to further that a little bit. One of the things that I think will also really elevate that room, if we get 2022 version of DJ Jones, like that defensive line really at that point really has a chance to be pretty darn good. Because then you really, you know, to circle back with Malcolm Roach, anybody remember where DJ Jones ranked coming from the San Francisco 49ers to the Denver Broncos?
Was he the number one? I know he was good.
He was definitely top 3. And I definitely remember hearing he was arguably the top graded run defender according to Pro Football Focus. So, I mean, the more that interior defensive line is with Angelo Blackson, I think Matt Henningsen is another player that's going to end up getting slept on here based on, you know, chemistry that he probably has already had. I know he's a secondary coach, you know, with Jim Leonard, but like there's just chemistry, if you will, you know, with him there. And I think that'll just maybe just add more to his confidence. But Matt Henningsen, I feel like, is going to be a player that will fly under the radar, maybe more so than Malcolm Roach. And then as far as, you know, players that are going to be battling for, you know, in preseason, but maybe battling for maybe some of that last roster spot, maybe Jordan Jackson, right? The Air Force kid, Jordan Jackson, Jordan Miller, the Battle of the Jordans. Jordan Miller was he was the kid from SMU, I think. Really high price, undrafted free agent that they ended up bringing over. And then Elijah Garcia. And I take back what I said about the player who will really lift the room. Now he's already in the doghouse anyway, but they didn't move on from Wazirike. They did not move on from Wazirike. If Wama Wazirike can really come in, and now he's behind the eight ball in the sense of his development, but when he came out of Iowa State, he was a pretty freaky defensive lineman. Like, he was blocking field goals, he was disruptive in the backfield, he was having a lot of tackles for loss at Iowa State. I mean, he was a very disruptive defensive lineman in the Big 12. So if he comes in and finds himself just better than the competition of, Brandon Matterson, Elijah Garcia, Jordan Miller, Jordan Jackson, and possibly even, in that Blackson and Henningsen discussion, you're talking about, I think, a situation for that defensive line. Well, okay, now in just the defensive line as a whole, you have Zach Allen to deal with, you have DJ Jones to deal with, you have JFM to deal with, you have Malcolm Roach to deal with, and then now you have Wazirike and Blackson, right? That is a pretty deep room at that point.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Anything else to say about this defensive line?
I mean, I don't think so, unless people in the chat, have.
How many defensive linemen they keeping? Chat, go ahead, though.
Man, that's a hard one. I mean, obviously, you're probably going to roll with Zach Allen. You're going to roll with DJ Jones. Maybe on the cuff, you're going to roll with DJ Jones. I think he could be a cap casualty, something to monitor. But JFM, DJ Jones, Zach Allen, Malcolm Roach. That's 4. They could do maybe 6.
Matt Henningsen, Angelo Blackson.
Maybe, I don't. Maybe 7. I don't. Like, yeah, I could see 7. Where at that point you're talking, I'll just say for giggles, at that point you're probably talking Elijah Garcia, Henningsen, Blackson, Roach, Jones, and Allen and Myers.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, do you think 6, 7?
Probably. I'm going to go 6 right now, but I think we could keep 7.
And then obviously, as we talk about the defensive line and we spent some emphasis there, it's very important they have good defensive line play. Because if they have good interior defensive line play, Brandon, it'll vastly improve the exterior of their pass rush, which is basically where we're going to go to next, which is, Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper, Jonah Ellis, Nick Benito. You certainly want to talk about, Drew Sanders. Unfortunately, he's not going to, be part of the discussion, right now. But yeah, I mean, Nick Benito, Ronnie Perkins had some run. But it is certainly, and actually we didn't get a chance to talk about this. But since we're talking about the pass rush, Brandon, the Broncos make maybe a shrewd move to that pass rush unit. And actually, I would say it's maybe not so much of the edge rusher, but maybe more so of the defensive end variety in Dondrea Tillman of the Birmingham of the UFL. Arguably, the top defender in the XFL and UFL, or basically the UFL. He's basically been the top defender of the UFL the last, couple of years. Top rated defender, top graded defender. There's been times where he's had multiple sacks in the game. So I'd be curious to see where he factors into that.
Yeah.
As far as not the Baron Brownings and Jonathan Coopers, but does he compete with the Wazirikes and so on and so forth? But we didn't get a chance to even mention his name, So, but yeah, Dondrea Tillman will be a very fun one to watch.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. There's some guys too on the like in the edge group that I'm still kind of interested in. Like when we drafted Thomas Nkum a couple years ago, he was interesting to me. And he might get a shot. Like I think he's probably going to compete with Jonah Ellis. Obviously we still have Jonas Griffith, who's been proven to be that's more like on the inside linebacker, but proven to be a versatile piece that we can kind of use in some different ways. Yeah. Against the pass or like even as a blitzer. Yeah, I don't know. I think we need to, I think now I feel okay about the defensive line in terms of like the kind of main three and like the ends. But I think now my focus is going to shift to like, what are we going to get out of the edge group and the pass rush? That's now the new defensive line question for me.
Yeah. So then let me ask, and to people in the chat, please comment what it is that you feel the answer is to this question. It is a very loaded question, given where the Broncos stand the last couple of years. But who are you most confident in?
In the edge room?
As far as the pass rush edge unit. It's a very loaded question because, like, it's almost like, when you're asking, like, who are you most confident in the wide receiver room, right? Like,
probably Baron Browning.
I think it's just funny how we always have to. I think it's funny how we always have to add the adverb before it. Like, probably Jonathan Cooper. Like, probably Baron Browning.
Maybe Jonathan Cooper. Probably Baron Browning.
Maybe Nick Bonito. Like,
we need Batman.
Yeah, so people in the chat.
Where's Bruce Wayne? We need Bruce Wayne.
We need Bruce Wayne. And someone who can, maybe not pick and choose when to be Bruce Wayne and when to be Batman. Like, we probably want a guy who could be Batman 24/7 on Sundays.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, I'm curious to see how it's really going to shake out. I think the way that you and I talked about it was Baron Browning is undoubtedly the most talented player in the room.
Easily.
You have the Tim Patricks of the room. Kudos to, Frankie Abbott, Joey Richards of Let's Talk Broncos for really giving that comparison. The Tim Patrick of the room, Jonathan Cooper. Then you really go into the fascinating ones of Nick Bonito and Jonah Ellis, because they're somewhat of the same type of player. In the sense that, like, you can very easily tell that there is definitely more to Nick Bonito. Like, he definitely feels like he's got a lot more in his bag than, he's 100% shown. Like, he's definitely has, how do I say this? He has, like Baron Browning, he has he and Jonah Ellis, he and Ellis have number one pass rusher talent. They do. Like, they have number one pass rusher talent. The thing with Nick Bonito is I need to see what's more into that bag. I know it's there. Like, I know that there's some stuff there. But, like, what can he show me? The one thing that I feel, confident in with Ellis just a bit more than Bonito, at least right now, is you could tell coming out of college there was just a bit more to his bag. Now, the thing with those types of players with Jonah Ellis and Nick Bonito is you might be actually far more confident in predicting that if the Broncos actually end up getting a 10-sack pass rusher, it might actually be Nick Bonito, just given the fact about, how quick his first step is, how quick and fast he's able to get to the quarterback based on his speed rush.
Mm-hmm.
I might actually feel a little bit more confident in saying that Bonito might actually be the more likely to get 10 sacks, but the actual more disruptive player of that entire pass rushing, unit might actually end up being between Baron Browning and Jonathan Cooper.
Yeah, probably. I think I'm going to say like Baron Browning still, just for now. I just think he's more talented physically. But I think Jonathan Cooper definitely has some more things to prove here, and I think he can do it. I think he's capable of doing it. Like we've seen some good things out of him, and he just needs to keep it going and be able to be more consistent with what he does show. I think Cooper is also very
underrated too.
Yeah.
Well, because like there's moments where he has games where you're just like, whoa, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Like a really good example would be when Von Miller was, injured. They traded him the following week, but Cooper filled in for him. I think it was the heartbreaking loss to the Browns, but it was that Thursday night game, where Cooper filled in and, he basically replaced Vaughn that game.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, who are you? Like, it was a switch went on with Cooper, and it was like, it's like they never missed a beat, when Vaughn stepped off the field. It's like, he was truly the most dominant pass rusher that night on Thursday when they were playing the Browns. So, I mean, like, there's moments where, like, he really could have that number one, pass rush potential to him. It's just, I think it's very easy to go to more of the flash, which is, of course, the Brownings. And I will say this, though, we talk about people that are in a contract year. I will say, if there's any hot take I feel the most comfortable in, I actually believe that the Broncos actually signed both Jonathan Cooper and Baron Browning.
Okay. I mean, I still think we probably draft someone next year, and maybe we draft someone high, depending on what the edge class looks like. But it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's not bad to keep a like a good rotation of guys that are able to get in there and get after the quarterback. It's just about, again, consistency and having that guy that can be that all-time pass, that all the time pass rusher that can also contribute in, like, he's not just going to have to be, he doesn't come off the field. You know what you're getting from him out of the pass rush, but you also know what you're getting from him. And he's not a liability against the run. He's not a liability if you, for whatever reason, need to put him in coverage, which hopefully you don't have to that much, but we still don't have that guy, in my opinion.
And you also
There's nothing wrong with keeping the cupboard stocked while you try to find that guy, because as soon as you do, you're cooking.
Yeah, well, and that's the argument for the wide receiver room, and the why that they've been able to keep the wide receiver room rather intact. But if they get that wide receiver one, it all falls into place. If they're able to do the exact same thing with the the edge room, where say they do keep a Baron Browning. He may not be your edge rusher number one, but you get your your number one dog at pass rusher. All else should fall into place at that point. Should fall into place, because at that point, if you do keep, Jonathan Cooper, or you move on from him, you still have pieces like Nick Bonito, Jonah Ellis, who at that point, after, this next year, depending on what they do, move on from Browning, move on from Cooper, whatever, they can rely on those guys to really take that next step. And and to talk about Jonah Ellis for a second, I would not even be the least bit surprised if he actually ends up becoming the Trey Hendrickson of the, of this room. And I think it's crazy to use that comparison, but I only use it just from the simple point of, Sean Payton drafted Trey Hendrickson in the later rounds, and Hendrickson became, and I think you and I actually had this conversation either off record or on a recording of Manely before, Hendrickson almost became the Ryan Kerrigan for like a handful of years. Like, he was incredible.
And Ryan Kerrigan, talk about most underrated pass rushers.
Yeah, maybe of like the 2010s, maybe like the 2015, and then 2015s. Like, he was, he was crazy. He was crazy good for a period. But yeah, I'm like, I think there'll be a point in time where, and I think here's where I kind of fall maybe somewhat with Jonathan Cooper too, because it's like, that's where, like, for a guy like Jonathan Cooper, he could maybe fall in line in that Trey Hendrickson type of situation, because those type of consistent pass rushers, players that Sean Payton really falls in love with, maybe he sees it more that Baron Browning may not necessarily see the long-term vision there, and it might actually be a Jonathan Cooper there who is going to end up being his Trey Hendrickson down the line. I mean, I'm just only spitballing on there, and it just kind of dawned on me as we're just kind of talking about it that maybe actually it's Cooper, in that same vein.
Yeah, could be.
So, any other final thoughts? As we touch on that.
I'm just excited. Let's get it. I mean, again, I don't even remember the last time that we had a good trenches on both sides of the ball, and there's a reason. It's a very commonly known, I guess, strategy is building the team from the trenches out and from the inside out. And we didn't really go that direction, but like we seem to finally have on paper a pretty good offensive line, which again, it's been pretty good recently. Russell Wilson was just that bad. And a good defensive line that can actually stop the run and isn't a complete liability. So I'm excited to see what this team looks like, and let's get after it.
We want the next episode to be when we, as far as our next training camp positional breakdown. What do you want the next one to be? Okay, since he can't decide,
maybe secondary.
I was gonna say, since he can't decide, we'll do a Mitchell Fabroni breakdown, film breakdown of Mitchell Fabroni.
Oh, okay.
So secondary, like
maybe secondary. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I will say this, like you were talking about how possibly, because when you talked about how the defensive line was, arguably the most improved, and I do agree. I think the secondary, while it has question marks, there are, I think, some arguments being made based on the additions that they made, where you could argue that it's also very, very upgraded, despite the fact that, Justin Simmons isn't here. Like, it actually could be upgraded in the extent of they have far more versatility in the room now. And I think that could carry a lot more weight, than, in essence, one guy kind of maybe, covering up a lot of the deficiencies on defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, which, I mean, to Justin's credit, that should tell you enough how great a safety Justin is, by the way.
Yeah. Seriously.
Well, thank you guys so much for hopping in the chat. I want to wish you and yours a very blessed and happy 4th of July. Stay safe out there. Don't, mix in with those crazies that are shooting off those fireworks at, midnight. If you need to go to bed, go to bed. Take a sleeping pill. Drink some sleepy time tea or whatever. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. No waking up at a midnight alarm clock, and then of course that alarm clock being, a bunch of fireworks going off.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing for the 4th, Brandon?
I'm hosting a barbecue. I don't know exactly when what we're exactly going to be doing for like fireworks, or if we're going to be ending before that and everyone's going to kind of do their own thing. But at the very least, for the majority of like the afternoon, we're just going to do a barbecue.
Nice.
It'll be a good time. Last time I hosted a barbecue on Labor Day, we did a buddy of mine brought over a volleyball net. Good times.
Nice. Nice. That's awesome.
Or not Labor Day. What was
Memorial Day?
Memorial Day. I was like, Labor Day's in September. Memorial Day.
I was gonna say for Big Mike's sake, I was expecting, I'm bringing out a thing of like cornhole and we're playing.
We tried to. We didn't have cornhole. We have cornhole this time. We're gonna have cornhole.
Yeah. I think I'll just probably just kind of lay low with family, not really do a whole lot. The Castle Rock location for fireworks actually isn't all that bad.
Mm-hmm.
So plus, it doesn't cost any money when you're sitting there on your front porch, watching, fireworks go off, from your location. So it'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, everybody, make sure you cherish that time with your family on that 4th of July. Again, stay safe. Make sure you, and then for Manely Broncos, make sure you follow both Brandon and I on social media. Cameron Parker PO, Brandon Miller PO. You can clearly see it there on your screen. Hit the subscribe button for the MHRT Network. Make sure you follow Manely Broncos. And to everybody that was in the chat, I want to say thank you guys so much again for hopping into the chat. Come next week, we hope to certainly have a guest on, and hopefully it'll be one that'll bring out some fireworks, if you will, to use the 4th of July. So maybe bring some fireworks. But anyway, I want to say thank you guys so much for hopping in the chat. Stay frosty and go Broncos.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down.